Hello and welcome back to Switch and Lever. As many of my regular viewers know, and probably all of my Instagram followers as well, I'm hugely into flea markets, antique and thrift stores. I'm always on the hunt for tools and random items which will tickle my fancy. I did a video some time ago where I visited a Turkish antiques bazaar, but I figured it was time again to take you guys on a journey of what goes on to acquire all those neat Instagram finds. I recently came back from San Francisco where I went to visit Maker Faire and hang out with makers and YouTubers of all different kinds. I'm awful at taking pictures and selfies in these situations, so you're just going to have to take my word for it that the people I met did indeed exist and were indeed neat. I stayed in the Bay Area for another week after the fair though, with my sights set on visiting as many of my old watering holes as possible, as well as finding as many new ones as I could as well. Unfortunately, before we visit any places, we're going to have to pour one out for two of our homies. Two amazing thrifting places which shut down just in the last year. Back when I lived in San Francisco, I lived just a stone's throw away from one of the best thrifting places in all of San Francisco, Thrift Town, right in the middle of the Mission District. They had a huge selection of items, clothes, kitchenware, and oftentimes old outdated electronics, and completely random items with questionable sources. I went by there not knowing they had closed down, and I was confused and sad when I didn't find them where they were supposed to be. Citing lower sales and a difficulty to get the finances in the black, Thrift Town closed down on March 31st, 2017, after 45 years in San Francisco. The second place is probably the best Goodwill I've ever visited. There used to be a huge Goodwill store on the corner of Van Ness and Mission Street since at least the 1990s, and they had everything you could imagine. Of course, the standard clothes, kitchenware and decorative knickknacks, but they had a vast selection of electronics and retro items in huge display cases and just scattered around the store. This place, together with Thrift Town, were my two watering holes, which I visited at least a couple of times a week. Goodwill sold the building to a developer who knocked down the existing building, and before long will put a high-rise in its place, filled with luxury apartments. It doesn't feel quite right to me. But forget it, Jake, it's developer town. But hey, let's not dwell, let's move on to better watering holes. Fortunately, some of my old regular stops still exist, and there are plenty of new ones which I've been wanting to check out. I'm going through them in the order I visited them, so we will be jumping around the Bay Area a bit. Either way, let's hit the road. A small warning before we start. Some of the material you're about to see is jerky and constantly moving due to how it was shot. If you're inclined to get motion sickness from materials such as this, it may be a good idea to pass up on this video or to watch it in shorter sittings. I've tried to stabilize material as best I could, but stabilization can only do so much. First place is stuff. It's an amazing gem hidden away in northern Mission of San Francisco, almost under the highway. Inside you'll find a wondrous mix of items, everything from random knickknacks, retro and vintage items from various backgrounds and industries, and a lot of really eclectic furniture. With the trend of Scandinavian furniture sweeping the Western world, expect to find a lot of brown wooden furniture mixed in with the weird randomness. I did manage to find a small pair of turn-of-the-century Starrett calipers, which I simply could not pass up. I could easily have left with more, as with every time I go here. Come here often, as their selection from different sellers who sell here changes all the time. The quality, however, is always top-notch. Nearby the aforementioned closed Thrift Town is Community Thrift, a similarly styled but much smaller store filled mainly with clothes, furniture, books and kitchen miscellanea. There is though a definite possibility to make some rather unique and cheap finds here as well. I found this interesting looking light fixture mounted to a concrete block for only $3. Or hey, how about this cassette tape and storybook from the Rocketeer movie? I almost got these, but my voice of, "Do you really have a use for that?" got the best of me. Still, neat stuff. While thrift and antique stores are great, there are also other kinds of stores around the Bay Area, like Creative Reuse in Oakland, where you can find a wide variety of materials for your projects. This place is basically like a thrift store, but for crafting material. There are bins full of just random things, like dozens of Altoid tins, old paints, egg cartons, and anything you can imagine. Therefore, it's a perfect place to go if you want to be inspired and brainstorm your next project. While you're out in Oakland, there's a place you simply have to visit. In fact, if you're thrifting in the Bay Area without stopping by Urban Ore, then I would entirely question your sanity. It's a huge warehouse filled with just about anything you can imagine. I've nicknamed it the House of 1,000 Doors, because they literally have more than 1,000 doors for sale. They have so much other salvage that you could spend hours here and still only get a cursory view of all that's available. For all you tool hoarders, they have a great area of old tools, but most which need a little TLC. There are electronics and lots of weird stuff from an insane amount of sources. There's also the obligatory shelf of old awards shining from afar. If you look hard enough, you may even find some rare gems hidden in display cases away from prying eyes. Luckily enough, prying eyes is my middle name. Scrap in southern San Francisco is a similar place to the one in Oakland, with a lot of creative reuse material. It's smaller and kind of dark and dingy, but there is no knowing what you will find. A stack of carpet samples or a bin full of bottle caps are all up for grabs. If you're looking for handsome men in old slide photographs, then you also came to the right place. They also for some reason have a lot of ceramic slip casting molds for various random items, which I'm sure you could do something fun with. Previously I got a lot of random material from here, but today not so much. But it's worth coming back every now and then to see what's new. While Thrift City Furniture has mainly furniture, it's a mix of consignment and the store owner's material, which means that you will find totally random things as well. Have a chat with the parrot while you're there, and make sure you look closely in the glass cabinets near the front desk as they hold many interesting curios. Wait, is that an old Stanley ruler? Thrift City is on a street in San Jose with many antiques and thrifting shops, and just a short walk down the street we end up at... if we keep walking, we end up at Teen Challenge Thrift Store. This is just your bog standard thrift shop with really nothing special, focusing mainly on everyday items. It may be worth a quick dip in here, but I quickly left and continued my route to Burbank Antiques, just next door. This store is a few connected rooms, each filled with mostly furniture and random knickknacks. Unfortunately, again, nothing here really held my interest, even though the quality of what was on display was top-notch. The question is really how long you can look at knickknacks and it's still feeling meaningful. Well, this next place sure put that question to the test. Briarwood Antiques is another consignment store with around 20 sellers, but it's absolutely packed with items. It's mostly smaller items, and there must easily be a million unique items in here, counting conservatively. While it's not a huge place, it's very easy to get lost, pulling out drawers and feeling like a modern-day Indiana Jones at the amazing discoveries within. Even though there are so many items, it's obvious that the dealers are focused on quality and oddities. There was so much here that I wished that I could have bought, but as I needed to be able to bring it all home, and as I'm trying not to buy items I won't use, I unfortunately struck out again. Among all of this, there wasn't really anything for me, but it was still easily the most interesting place I had been to thus far. Given a little looser reins, I would have gone absolutely crazy in here, and left rather poor. Then I walked next door and I was floored. Antiques Colony is a wonderland. There is really no other way to describe it. 50 individual dealers work out of this absolutely massive space. You can find just about anything in here, from the purely decorative to kitsch to furniture and lighting, Americana, and even one dealer with a vast amount of tools. If I can't find anything here, then I really can't find anything anywhere. Even though the other places on this street ranged from poor to great, this is definitely the place which would pull me back to San Jose. There is such a great difference in selection of items, and the quality is amazingly good. I found myself caught by collections of items I didn't actually have any interest in, simply because it felt as much like walking in an actually interesting museum as an antique store. I lost a good couple of hours in there, but I could have easily stayed longer if I didn't have a train to catch. Piedmont Lane Gallery is a nice and small two-story store in Oakland filled with a great variety of items. I would say that it's filled with kitsch, but that's too simple of an explanation. There is kitsch, but there is also good solid furniture, a huge amount of frames and paintings, and just random items like a bandsaw in the middle of everything. They do have something for almost everyone though, especially if you're up to digging in some dusty and dark nooks and crannies in the back of the store. I could very easily have picked up some of the lead type blocks if I had anything but a decorative use for them. Next step is Treasure Island Flea Market, or Treasure Fest as they've rebranded themselves to. This is a big outdoor market that happens the last weekend of every month on Treasure Island, located between San Francisco and Oakland. Usually it holds around 300 vendors, which sell just about anything imaginable. Frankly though, I'm a little bit disappointed. I thought it would be more of a flea market and less of a place for local artists and makers to hawk their wares. Don't get me wrong, it holds reasonably high quality, but I found perhaps 5 to 10 of the stands actually interesting, which is a bit disappointing. There are a few vendors who hold true to the previous name of this market and offer more typical flea market material, and they do indeed hold a very random mix of items. There is also a nice $5 clothing stand, which is well worth going through. I found their stuff held higher quality than what I'm used to from Swedish second-hand clothing shops, and for $5 you can't really go wrong. A few words need to be said about Goodwill as well. I did visit a few Goodwill locations in Oakland, San Mateo, San Francisco and Mountain View, and I feel that they can be very much hit or miss. They survive on donations from the public, so what you end up running into in any given store can vary widely just from week to week. My foray into Goodwills during my time in the Bay Area was not at all fruitful, however, especially so after the disappointment of hearing of the closing of my favorite Goodwill location. It is, on the other hand, interesting to see what people choose to donate. In terms of randomness, I don't think anything tops Goodwill, but in reality, unless you're looking for stuff for your kitchen or shopping for secondhand fashion from last year, they usually don't hold much interest. Though you never know, and you could just find that golden nugget in all of the junk. You never know, and that's part of the charm. So all in all, I visited 16 different places, and I ended up buying just 7 items. Comparing to the flea markets I usually go to in Sweden, that's about the same hit and miss rate. However, the difference was that the amount of oddities in the Bay Area was far greater, and even though Sweden is great, the thrifting experience near San Francisco was by far more enjoyable. I may post a lot of great items on Instagram, but most of the times I go to a flea market, I end up buying nothing but a coffee and a cinnamon bun, and enjoying my day. My score from Bay Area thrifting ended up being an oversized $5 flannel shirt, a Stanley boxwood ruler from around 1910, a small knife switch akin to Dr. Frankenstein's lab, 2 starrett calipers, one from early 1900s to measure threads with, and a slightly newer and smaller outside caliper. From Urban Ore, I dug out an incomplete but old starrett inside micrometer set, which will need some work to get into shape. Such a nice case for it though. Last item is a simple file folder organizer. It's not old, nor is it in the best of conditions. But I had a use for some thick cardboard, so I turned it into some quick business cards for an event I was going to before I had time to get any proper ones. Now, that's the story all about. That's the story of how I thrift. I spend more time than I care to admit looking through weird and wonderful places for interesting things which engages me. I talk with the vendors, I learn new things about items, and sometimes I buy, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have a direct use for what I get, and sometimes I get stuff simply because I cannot pass them up. The unfortunate reality of living like that is that I collect too much weird stuff. And if not kept in check, it could easily turn into a hoarder problem. Right now, I think I have it under control.
Give me.
But I beg you, don't donate anything to me.
Must have.
Do not contact me.
Contact me.
If you have cool vintage tools or weird items which you would like to give to me.
Read between the lines.
Oh man, that kills my throat. Anyway, that was the Bay Area. A huge thank you to everyone I met at Maker Faire, to the ones who came up and said hi to Switch and Lever, and those of you who only recognize me by my voice. Thank you to my gracious hosts in Mountain View, and thank you to all of you who made it this far in the video. I hope I get a chance to meet more of you in the future. This is the usual jazz. Watch more videos, click them, enjoy them, like them, hit subscribe, check out other things on other sites like Instagram, all the good stuff.
All the good stuff.
Thanks again for watching. Until next time!